All right. Hopefully this works. So please introduce yourself.
Porras, call sign Ninja.
All right. Yeah. So you want to tell the audience how we met?
Sure, mutual acquaintance. Yeah, good friend you just interviewed. I guess gave me my contact information. Great guy. Yeah, Bob's a good dude. Known him for years.
Yeah. No, Bobby was awesome. I still talk to him to this day.
Yeah.
I was just thinking in class today. I'm like, man, he talks like how I do, or at least how I used to, because he loves to tell these long stories to explain something, and he always uses the same phrases within those stories. Some of my
Uh-oh.
favorite ones are,
Yeah.
so my point to you with that is, that's one, because when I ask him a question, he's always like, so my point to you with that is,
Yeah.
and then he goes on. No, I really like Bob. Cool
Yeah.
dude. Oh yeah, that's another one where he's like, and listen, he's not a good dude. He's a great dude. That's another one. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about
Oh
too.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He's the king of one-liners, just mixing them all into a sentence, and it's awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, so I was actually on the phone with him last night too. Unrelated to this. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself other than just your cosign and your name.
Well, so retired a couple times. Did 20 years in the Army. Born and raised in LA, first of all, before that. Then joined the Army at right after high school, really. Then spent 20 years in the Army, and most of that time was in the special operations side of the house. Got out, retired from after 20 years in the Army, and then went into contracting. Went to school for a little bit, and then that's when 9/11 happened. So I got into the contracting side of the business. Got in contracting, program management, somewhere in the contracting world, and that was kind of what my focus was in school, was all the business operations stuff. So that helped out, and then did a couple years of that, and then got introduced to other things. Just really stayed in the war zones, stayed in the conflict areas, Afghanistan, then Iraq, and back and forth all over the place, and then got into the CIA at one point, and then spent 16 years there, doing the same thing, protection, just low profile, more, I guess, clandestine, undercover kind of protection, and then retired from there. And then now started a business teaching most of the stuff that I did then: firearms training, close quarter combat, you name it. Anything from regular civilians, how to shoot their guns, how to be safe with them. Safe citizen stuff is all what I'm all about. If they have a gun, let's learn how to use it correctly. And all the way up to law enforcement, military, tactics, and close quarter combat and all that fun stuff.
So we had a very long discussion about your job in protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was very cool. So your job mainly had to do with protecting internal individuals at the CIA, mainly the director, right? Or directors, I should say. So how did that work? What types of jobs, like how would that look, I guess, as a job?
Well, it's a very so in the protection world, in the protection community, it's very traditional, coat and tie kind of stuff, right? Very, executive protection kind of is what everybody thinks of when they think protection. In this case, my role was a lot more plain clothes, like everyday clothes. You're not going to know I'm going to be in the area, but I'm providing that protection. I'm armed and everything else usually, and it's usually in a high threat area. So for the post 9/11 timeframe, everything in the war zones or conflict zones, whatever you wanted to call them, high threat areas, right? And so it wasn't the whole idea was to stay in the shadows and provide protection, and so kind of overwatch activity that was going on. And if something bad happened, then I was in close proximity to respond. I mean, look, if you think about, or I know when people think about protection details, I think Secret Service, State Department, those kind of things, like huge amounts of people, cars, vehicles, motorcades comes to mind. People think of like 5, 6, 7, 50 something cars in a motorcade for the presidential detail. and coats and ties and formal events and those kind of things. And so in my side of the house, I'm behind the scenes, in the crowds, in the restaurants, wherever our folks are going, just to be part of the environment. And whatever clothing was in the local, wherever we were in the world, right? Wear the local clothes, blend in, and just stand by. If something happens, then I'm right there. But unbeknownst to anybody else, I'm not obviously a part of the party that's there, and that's the whole idea.
Right. Well, I've interviewed and I spoke, and again, we had a very in-depth discussion about this over the phone. And so when you are absolutely right, when people think of protection, they usually think of guy in a suit, maybe even with a gun, who's right beside the president, or maybe they're in the distance with a sniper, making sure the area is good, or police motorcades, like you're saying.
Yep.
But what I find really fascinating, and I find the entire idea of protecting someone kind of fascinating, because there's so much that goes into it as compared to just bodyguard work, which is like celebrities and stuff like that, which, everybody knows how that works. But with your job, it was for the protection mainly, again, of directors, right? Of the director of the CIA, right?
That was part of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, who else would you say you protected?
So that was when the director was traveling in those high threat areas. Yeah, we'd help his primary. So his primary teams that traveled with him, even back at home, they do all the work. And they back here in the States or in a lesser threat area, right? They're always with them 24/7. Us, on the other hand, we're only supporting those missions when they're in the higher threat areas, whether it's called a war zone or combat zone or just a high threat environment in general. But we've helped because we're the subject matter experts in the areas that we're in too. We're often called to help. Even I've helped presidential details, State Department visits, cabinet members going to foreign countries, and just to help. Usually it's helping their protection detail like know the town. Since we know the towns that we're at, we're usually sought after to provide one escorts for so there's what's called an advance team that goes with president or any detail, really any protection detail. They have people that go out before the dignitary, VIP, whoever it is, go out and they set everything up. So we were very integrated into those teams for everybody from presidential details, Secretary of State, cabinet members, congressional visits, all those things. So we were kind of just taking them around, and since we know the streets like the back of our hands, they used us for an emergency response if needed, but typically it was our interaction with the local law enforcement that was more helpful to them than anything. Because it was us and maybe it's only 4 or 6 guys, but we have contacts within the local, let's say it could be the army, in the country that we're in, or the police department or something. And so they use us a lot for those kind of connections.
Well, one thing we did talk about is the fact that there are various directors and people that are in politics that need protection, right? So president and his nearby family and, some people related to him, Secret Service, right? That's the first thing that when it comes to protection, people are thinking, Secret Service, president, maybe some senators, some people like that, but generally not, right? That's more the state police's job, and people of that nature, maybe the FBI too. So when we spoke,
I heard something over there.
All right, yeah, okay, so we're back on.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, all right, hopefully. Okay, so
I'm not touching anything.
All right, let's keep it that way. Hands off the keyboard. Sit on them. Sit on your hands. That's what my teacher always say. But all right. So yes, I was talking protection for Congress members and stuff like that. We spoke a bit over the phone about people like Nancy Pelosi and how their protections, people like Capitol Police, maybe Secret Service. But then you get to the directors. Now that's a little bit of a different job. Who's protecting these directors? Because these are obviously targeted people.
Yeah,
especially at their homes.
It's usually internal to whatever department they're at. For us, for the agency, it was we have our own folks doing that, and everybody has protection details for their directors. So the FBI has a protection detail that comes from the FBI folks. Um, State Department, same thing. They have the Bureau of Diplomatic Security who protects the State Department. Whoever it is, ambassadors, the Sec State, and all those folks, and they all have their own protocols on how far the food chain they go down to protect. So it's usually family members, you know, immediate family members, and it all depends on the actual detail and the person who's being protected and the department's protocols. But everybody comes from their own independent. DOD has their own folks too, protecting all the cabinet. All the cabinet members. They all have their own folks. Capitol Police does all the. So between the folks up on the Hill, you have Capitol Police who does their protection while they're in DC, and then but while they're home, it's usually the state police from the state that they're coming from. That's usually coming from the governor's office and those kind of things. And then a combination. So in the case of Congress and Senate folks, the Capitol Police will take them home, and they'll have a presence there. But most of the protection is coming from either local law enforcement or the state police in their respective communities.
So now let me ask you this. So you and Bobby had a very similar job, right? In some way, right? And you guys met in the protection teams, right?
Right.
And that was for which director? Panetta?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know him and Panetta were somewhat close. They knew each other kind of.
Yeah.
What was that like? How did you guys meet?
He was a great director, by the way. So I'm almost positive we were overseas, and I want to say it may have even been in Israel. And I was supporting the detail there. I'm almost positive that's where we first met. It could have been in training too, doing all this stuff, because we share a lot of we do all the same training, so it could have been in a training environment too. But I'm almost positive it was overseas somewhere when I met Bobby. It could have been Iraq or Afghanistan too, but I'm almost positive it was Israel, and it was for Panetta. Yeah, great time. Kind of, sort of. As a director, I thought he was a great director, but a lot of stuff going on during those times too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know Bobby, because again, we've spoken a lot over the phone, but we've also spoken on the podcast. Did you watch my interview with him?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh, it's up if you ever want to watch it.
I think the last time I was checking it, it wasn't up yet.
Well, it's up now. So
okay.
if you ever have some free time, go and watch it. But
I will. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, no, it was we talked a bit about mainly his job protecting the directors and ski trips he would go on that he would protect them as well. And he always loves to tell the story of, look, man, you walk into my house, there's gonna be a picture of me and my family, and there's gonna be a picture of me and Leon Panetta. Yeah. But yeah, no. So when you were doing that job, right, and when we spoke on the phone too, one thing I asked you about was, the fact that these guys are constantly in danger, the directors, right, because they're making all these decisions that are basically damaging the operations of enemies, right?
Oh, yeah,
whether it be criminals or terrorist organizations. So we did speak about this of protection at their houses of direct threats. What would that look like for, let's just say, Mike Pompeo?
Oh, Mike Pompeo. I'm not sure. So it depends too on the director. So if they live on a military base already, that's a whole other thing, right? So usually it's a private residence. But yeah, 24/7, there is a team ready for a lot of things, really, even just transportation. Takes a pretty big crew just to take them out to dinner, as an example, because you're taking them, possibly their family members, and those kind of things. So there's a pretty significant number of folks that are around. And then there's always, whether they're there or not, at home. So if they have kids too, their kids get escorted and protected while they go to school, right? So they get driven by protective agents. Same with any other thing. So I can speak to the folks at the agency. They're well protected, whether it's from technology to the actual detail itself. That's what everybody sees, is the protective agents on the ground. The intel to back it up, talking to the local law enforcement on who's doing what in town, and you name it. And like you said, they do get a lot of they do get a lot of threats, right? So, but then there's a whole nother group of folks that are just checking out and validating if they're legitimate or not. So they're very well protected, and I'm almost positive most of the departments have something similar set up. And again, I can speak to the agency; they are very well taken care of.
Well, you mentioned about technology. When you say technology, do they get like a special phone, or like how does that work?
They'll be tied in. Yeah, communications wise, they'll be tied in. They'll be able to talk to, obviously, the president at any given time, if that's what it takes. But yeah, 24/7, they're connected and they're protected pretty much anywhere they go, and it includes overseas, in travel, in the air. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, they're constantly in communications.
Well, one thing I will say about I forget, I had another guy named Rob. So I've had like 3 Bobbies.
Yeah.
But Bob Porras, Bob Bunch, and this other guy Rob. He actually worked at the CIA too before he worked at the Secret Service.
All right.
But he worked Bill Clinton's protective detail.
Oh
right?
man.
And this was after Clinton was president, but that's still really cool.
Yeah.
I think while he was president too, I think he worked Jimmy Carter's protection. But when people think of the Secret Service, they're thinking coat, ties, right? So if I saw you, for example, with, I don't know, Panetta, right, or Pompeo or whoever, right, am I gonna know that, or are you gonna just blend in, like you said, like plain clothes, like you're gonna be a friend on a fishing trip, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're not gonna know that I'm with that party at all. So funny story, do the Bobby style. So I was with a visit, and again, yeah, it was Jordan, Israel and Jordan. It was kind of a mix. It was a huge, like a whole area that he was visiting, and it was a regular touring visit. So a lot of things that our folks do that need protection like that, cabinet members and all that kind of stuff. The countries always want to show off, a tourist site of something significant to them, and do those kind of things. And this was one of them. And I was in the area, and as we were driving down, the director, his detail, and everybody's traveling, and they get their own VIP parking and all that stuff. And I'm not going to join that group. I'm going to be totally separate from all that stuff. And as I was driving down to this parking lot, I see what I remember another protectee that I had in Iraq, like, I don't know, 6 years before that, right? And he was on the State Department side of the house when I was doing contracting, and I protected him when he was in Iraq, and he was in another position he was in Jordan for a vacation. I can't remember where he was assigned, but he was an ambassador or deputy ambassador or something like that, somewhere out there in the Middle East somewhere. And he was there with his family, and his family lived there while he was wherever he was assigned, right? So he's walking down there, and I recognized him as we were passing by. I was like, oh man, that's the guy. I'm gonna say his name. That's the guy, protected in Iraq. And I said, isn't that weird? We're gonna run into each other out here in the middle of nowhere, and I'm supposed to be incognito, and nobody knows me. And I said, well, maybe we won't actually go face to face, but at this particular spot, It was kind of hard to avoid. And eventually we were going to run into each other. And so then I made the initiation. I initiated the conversation. We'll just call him John. I say, "Hey, John, how you doing? How you been?" And he looked at me, and this is a place in the Middle East, so it's a tourist area. But he looked at me, and he's got his family. He's like, "Are you kidding me? What do you?" He thought I was there on vacation too, because that's what he was doing. And he was, "Let me introduce you to my wife and his kids that were there, and all this other stuff." And want to just give him uh, like a bro hug, right? So he hugged me. He felt my body armor underneath my clothes, and he backed up and he did this. Well, he goes, "What are you working right now?" I said, "Yes." Yeah, and he's looking around. He knows the deal. He knows what I did for him, and he looked around. He not recognizing anything, and he introduced me to his wife and kids, and hugged them too. And they're like, "Oh wow, you have, whatever." It's like, is that what is it that dangerous here? I said, "Well, I'm not here, but I'm working right now," and explained that one. And I finally said, "Well, do you want to meet who I'm here working for right now?" And I'll go make an introduction. And he's like, "Sure, sure." And he's looking around. He can't tell who's who in this huge group of folks. And then we started getting closer, and he realizes starts recognizing protective agents and everybody doing their job, and he recognizes our director. He's like, "Are you kidding me right now?" It's like, who would have thought you would be here, with him and in this place? And he didn't see me like 4 or 5 years before that. And he was like, "This is just the smallest world." He goes, every time, because I was his protective agent. Anywhere he went, he saw me. And that's what he said. He's like, "I can't go anywhere without running into you." And I'm almost positive that's the same trip that Bobby was on, because it was Director Panetta that was doing the visit.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bobby always talks about other Bobby,
Yeah.
not Secret Service Bobby. The three Bobs are gonna get confusing. I should put you guys all in a room together and just be like, "Bob, no, the other one," you know. But I was gonna say that, what's it called? Bob always talks about Panetta being like the main one that
Yeah.
he protected, right? Though he did do work, because he worked all the way up until 2021, late 2021 too, I think.
Mhm.
When did you leave the CIA?
2022, end of the year, about July, August, maybe 2022.
Oh wow, so you left like a little bit after him, but
Mhm.
so now that's interesting too. So you actually worked under Bill Burns, the
Mhm.
current director of the CIA.
Mhm.
Um, Now I think Bobby, when we actually had our conversation about the directors, one comment that he made about Burns is that, or William or Bill, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call him,
Yeah.
is that I think he doesn't have an intelligence background. I don't think, does he?
No, he's coming from the State Department side of the house, so more ambassador type history.
Well, that's interesting because Pompeo as well also had a very interesting background, because he was in West Point. I actually met his best friend, who ended up becoming the former head of the New Jersey FBI, who I've mentioned many times on the show. But he what's it called? He was in West Point with Mark Esper, funny enough.
Yeah.
And then he became a senator, I think. And then after that, he became Secretary of State and then the director of the CIA. And I think both during Trump's presidency.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's a
Pompeo's another good one. Yeah, another great guy, just as a person, but as a director as well.
a lot of people like Pompeo.
Yeah.
But did you ever get to meet him?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What was he like?
Yeah. Very uh, so very similar as a personality, or personable, as Panetta was. I mean, talk to you like you were like me or you, right? First time they see you. and just start talking to you, and actually engage with you in a conversation. And you don't have to be anybody special, anybody, you're one of their people, so they're going to talk to you. Now they're very, very genuine people. The two of them are very equally that way. Yeah, I like them both for that reason. But Pompeo, yeah, he's a great guy, great attitude, sense of humor. They both have good sense of humor, but very driven, very focused, very mission oriented. That almost didn't seem like they didn't go against the grain if they didn't have to, because if there was a need to do that, then sure they would. But they weren't, I guess in layman terms, they weren't yes men. They were just doers. They just very mission focused and people focused. Everybody, I'm pretty sure I can speak for everybody. Everybody loved them both.
Yeah, I can tell Panetta and what's it called? I think another all right one. I don't actually know how Bobby felt. I think he felt good about him, but Petraeus.
Yeah, kind of short lived, but yeah, he was doing good while he was there. Yeah, I don't think he stuck around long enough for everybody to really feel him out. But yeah, I knew him when he was the commander of forces in Afghanistan. So, and apparently that's when I guess that scandal that he was involved with happened, or whatever happened there happened. But yeah, he was always liked by his troops too.
Well, one thing I do want to ask about. Well, first of all, I want to go back to William, or Bill Burns, or whatever you want to call it. So, how was he comparatively to the other directors? Did you ever get to meet him? What was his operations like? What were they focused on?
Well, so during that time frame too, that there's too many other distractions. Really, what was happening during his time frame when he got there with this administration and all that stuff. So then I don't have a really good take on Burns. I caught him at the beginning of his assignment, his tour. But it was all about all that woke stuff that was going on at the time. I wasn't happy with any of that stuff going on. There was really no need for that, I don't think. So for everybody that hears it, we were about as diverse as you can get in the agency. I don't, because nobody knows unless you're there what the actual environment is like. But it could have. So in my take, Burns could have said, okay, you're going to getting pushed all the woke agenda stuff. He could have said, or diversity, inclusion, equity, all that stuff. He could have said, hey, we're already there. He could have just said, hey, we're the poster children of that stuff. We're already there. The agency has always been, in my 16 years there, about as diverse as you can get. Just like the military, my experience in the military, about a good a snapshot of America as you can get. There was no need for all that stuff. There was really no need for all that. They just went over the top of that, which kind of didn't agree with any of that stuff. They could have easily just not blew it all up, but said, hey, we're already there. I mean, we can already tell you how to do all this stuff, be diverse and all that. Yeah, that was just a bad time. I don't have any real. I never met the guy. Seemed like a good guy, but the whole world was changing when he showed up, and I'm not quite so sure he handled that the way he could have, the best way he could have, because like I was saying, we were already there.
Well, one thing I will say about him is that he's been, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but he has been known to have a lot of private meetings with different people. I think you know one of those names. But Prigozhin was one of them, right? Before Prigozhin's death, by accident, after he betrayed Putin, before he betrayed Putin, and he went and tried to basically take over Russia, he had a meeting with William, or the current director of the CIA. So a lot of people kind of went to that and said, there's obviously something wrong here, right? Or I think it was even the middle of the coup, right? And it doesn't
Yeah,
take
yeah.
a genius to kind of figure out there's something weird happening there. But I don't know if that's just an American public take or if you would agree with that.
Yeah, well, I would say that as a director of the CIA, and a lot of things just in general in the CIA, because you do talk to friendly, the opposition, and whatever, the just a lot of unruly people, good and bad, and mostly bad. Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I know that's hard to explain. That a lot of the things the agency does. It's 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 good to live under the the cloak of conspiracy, right? Because then the real thing never happens and it never gets disclosed, right? But yeah, that's pretty common though. That's pretty common to talk to any number of good and bad people alike, and that's kind of what sometimes the protection details do. Make sure that when they're going to meet these people, that that it can be done safely. But yeah, whether it's pro whatever government it is or counter whatever government we're talking to at the time, whatever's in the national interest of the country at the time. Yeah, it's very common for them to talk to as many people as possible. And really, because guess what? It's all about intel. We'll see what this guy's head's all about, right? And who better to do that sometimes than the director?
Well, another thing I wanted to touch on about the directors is the fact that a lot of people generally know what the president's doing, right? And they generally know what a lot of people in power, especially and including other directors, are doing, right?
Mhm.
People generally know what Chris Wray is doing and what his focuses are. People generally know what all these different directors are doing, including Secretary of Defense, whatever. But the director of the CIA always seems, at least in a public perspective point, very secretive, right? Comparatively to basically any other director or position of power, right?
Mhm.
With the exception of maybe the director of the NSA, but even he testifies before Congress all the time. The director of the CIA, though, is generally known as kind of a mysterious guy, and a lot of people don't trust them because of that. What do you have to say to people who kind of have that thought process?
Well, I think it falls same in the same line as it's it works. It's better not to disclose anything and let people think what they think, right? Because then business can be, you know, as usual. Um, I don't think they're so willing from a personal perspective either, just to disclose their actual beliefs and all those kind of things. So conspiracy theories or whatever, whoever wants to say anything, it's almost like, oh yeah, go ahead and say what you want to say, and we know the real deal. And it works because there'll always be somebody who's coming up with some other thing, right? I don't think it's really that necessary personally to have disclose all those kind of things, and for good reason. A lot of things need to be kept, you know, not so much secret, like, but who needs to know? Like, kind of a need to know kind of thing. How bad do you really need to know, other than just for the sake of knowing, right? Um, yeah, so I don't think any harm comes of it. I don't think there's any ill intent for it. Um, but they're, because of the nature of what they do and the the agency itself, it's good to keep everything behind closed doors.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do want to ask about secrecy and secrets, right, which is kind of the nature
Mhm.
of CIA. Have When it comes to you keeping secrets, and because obviously there's always the areas you can't talk about and things like that, and when it comes to what the CIA and people that work for the CIA have to keep secret, right, and what the American public does not know that makes them kind of suspicious of the CIA.
Mhm.
Have you ever, how should I put this, been aware of secrets that would reassure American public conspiracy theories?
I don't think so. No, but I mean, so personal experience too, though. The people, my own family didn't know exactly what I was doing when I was in the military, my whole military time. But they always thought things, right? And heard things and heard people say things that had no idea what I was doing. Same thing in the agency. Um, and that's okay. It's like, well, there has to be people in that community that can maintain some sense of and to say secrecy, there's just things that people don't need to know. I mean, otherwise, I mean, it doesn't matter what you tell people sometimes. They're going to think things anyway. And then, so how far do you go down that rat hole of, disclosing things, right? Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything that could have been disclosed that I could have disclosed. Like, no, that's not really what happened, you know. And here's the real deal, right? Yeah, I don't think anybody does that really, and it's all based off of or national security, right? Um, and it's there's a lot of folks that I mean, there's several levels. Everybody has all these clearances. The people on the hill, all those folks, and usually they use the disclosures as like a political agenda thing. Like, I know something that you need to know because this person is really a bad person, or whatever their personal agenda is. Personal agendas are the single most like damaging things. One, to mission focus, to maintaining mission focus, or having a mission. Everybody's got a mission. Everybody's got a purpose. Um, but there's a lot of personal agendas out there for that destroy mission focus 100% of the time. And you see it all the time on national media right now. There's no need just to get votes, or just to stay in power, or just to maintain your position. People are disclosing things or saying things that aren't necessarily true, or don't need. I don't even know what's going on right now. All of this stuff going on now is totally upside down, in my opinion. And there's really no and then to what end, right? Just to maintain the power. So there are a lot of folks like that, and people in position of power who are saying things, or maybe not saying things, and using their positions just to maintain this what's going on right now, which I disagree with. So many things going on right now. Our involvement in Ukraine, our involvement in Ukraine, culture, our involvement with Israel, and all those. Oh man, it's crazy. Everything's upside down right now.
Yeah, it is absolutely a shame, and it's a very strange world to live in when there's multiple wars with U.S. allies and extremely important and powerful countries, some of which are the most important and powerful in the world, such as Russia. And to touch on Russia, I want to circle back to the Prigozhin question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, Prigozhin dies by accident in a plane crash, right? Right after doing a coup in Russia. Now, most people don't know the story of, he goes and this is all over the news. He does a coup in Russia, and he's having all his private military guys go to try to go to Moscow. All of a sudden, Putin schedules a meeting with him. What was said in that meeting, I have no idea, but they do this meeting. All of a sudden, Prigozhin's just suddenly not interested, peels back, goes to, I think, Poland, and all of a sudden he's on a plane which crashes. In your opinion, was that really an accident?
Yeah, I have nothing else to believe that was anything other than that.
So you don't think that Putin?
I feel a suspicious about it as you do, baby, but I don't know anything else that would definitely tell me that it was anything other than what it was.
Right. Well, you can definitely see where I'm coming from when.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Epstein, right?
Yeah. Well, who committed suicide,
Right.
which everybody,
I don't know anything about him either that would lead me to believe I know otherwise, but Yeah, it does seem kind of shady, kind of in the same sense, right?
Yeah, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I'm very skeptical of things, but to call myself a conspiracy theorist, I'm far from it. I'm just
But this
very
doesn't make sense though, right? Yeah, I get it.
right. Yeah, well, I'm 100% skeptical of, just most things that happen in the government, but like to a reasonable degree of like,
Yeah.
if something, look, if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it probably is a duck, right? I'm a big believer in that. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
if the evidence points to something, that's probably the best thing. Like it's probably the best answer, and it probably is the correct answer. So when it comes to somebody like Putin, who is basically the most powerful man publicly in the world that we know of, right? Or one of them at least,
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into the argument of who the most powerful man in the world is, but
Yeah.
publicly, probably Putin. So you get someone like him who's known to allegedly have people accidentally die who might have, gone against him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
By accident. And I use that term accident very, very lightly, and then all of a sudden you get this guy who's like his best friend, or not best friend, but one of his closest allies does this coup. And then all of a sudden, one phone call, not phone call, but like one meeting, goes to Poland, never returns, and then goes on one plane, and then everybody dies, right? Again, I'm not going to purport that theory like that. That's exactly what happened, but it's, I don't know. I can't think otherwise. It's hard to think otherwise.
Yeah, and nobody's felt obligated to dispel that myth, right? If it's a myth or not, right? That 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 to me adds to the more suspicious in my mind out of things like that.
Well, as Mr. Bunch would say, no evidence is usually a lot of evidence. If someone's not saying no, it's probably because it's true in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now to continue off of that, Putin, right?
Uh-oh.
Where does
I
what is
just lost you in the screen here. Oh, there you are. You're back.
All right, yeah. Scared me for a second.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
now about Putin, right? He's all over the news. And in the sense that everybody's questioning, like, does he have a daughter? Does he do this? Does he like all this stuff about Putin?
Mm-hmm.
What are your views on Putin?
Well, he's pretty smart. He's managed to hang on to his power and do what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. I don't know. That's somebody I would never want to underestimate. I think he's underestimated by a lot of folks. One, just about the amount of power that he has and the amount of power he can wield against whoever, whenever he wants to. I do think he's one of the most honest people. There's no secret about what he wants to do. I mean, he's told everybody. I mean, he's told all his intentions, and he's taken Crimea, and now he's in Ukraine, and he's done all those things. He's done everything, and he's told everybody about it before he's done anything. And yeah, that was not a secret. Him going into Ukraine, we saw that one coming. He said he was going to do it, and yeah, just very he's a very formidable when you talk about like a president, somebody in charge of like Russia. he's he's pretty smart. I mean, strategically and everything. And to be honest with you, a lot of things that are in Russia, like the status of the army and the stuff that they have, it's not the best stuff, but they have a lot of it. And that's like right now he's showing that's enough.
Right. Again, I think most dictators are put in a very different position of power, though, than the U.S. president. Because the U.S. president, everything he does is scrutinized, usually by the American media, by people around him even. Whereas with dictators, that doesn't really happen, which leads for their operations being much more simple and in some cases very effective, right? Now, that's a whole nother topic of, styles of government.
Yeah.
But I just had a guy, Bill Holstein, on who was talking about how America's biggest weakness is also its biggest strength, which is that it's an open society, right? He's a journalist. He studied China for over 40 years, so he knows much better than probably you or even you or I would know about them. And he's looked into every single thing. He even co-authored his book with the head of cyber counter surveillance at the Pentagon. So generally knows what he's talking about, and he talks all the time. And he's written multiple books over 40 years about it. And again, it's just the fact that America is a very open society. I would say is probably one of its biggest weak points. Unfortunately, it's also one of its greatest strengths, and we pride ourselves on. But it is a very, very open society comparatively to something like Russia. Now,
oh yeah, well, that's being exploited right now to our disadvantage in a lot of ways.
in
You
what
talk
sense?
about the border, the woke culture, and everything else. I mean, it's everybody's taking advantage of the open society right now. The expecting to get freedom of speech just by having your feet on in the country, not necessarily being a citizen, but somehow they're it takes a little bit more than that. I have friends waiting, doing the on the border issue, immigration issue too. They're waiting. They're doing it right. They're waiting their time. They applied, and it's going to take a couple of years, and it's going to take some money. But guess what? They're waiting, and they're all the other folks that are coming across the border and just expecting automatic rights without even wanting to become a citizen. They don't want to become a citizen. They just want to be here. And guess what? They're being given it just for free. I mean, didn't have to apply, didn't even have to ask. It just showed up. And a lot of those are bad actors. I guarantee. So even my family, are very pro open border. I'm guessing because they think it's just people who want a better life, Mexicans, because we're Mexican. That's part of our heritage, and it's just Mexicans who want a better life. It's like, well, that's not just Mexicans. First of all, coming across the border, and it's not everybody who just wants a better life. Yeah, there's nothing good that's happening right now, and no other country does that. Just lets people walk into their country unchecked. No applications, nothing. I mean, you get scrutinized more in a lot of other countries, and not because they're a closed society or anything. Everybody does that. Everybody has a border that does that.
Well, again, there's a point about America and its chaos is the fact that America is, and I just had I didn't upload this interview yet, but she's an FBI hostage negotiator, and or former, I should say. But when we were talking, it's like America's seen as like the super police, right? Like the head of democracy, the leaders of the free world, which is true to some extent. But boy, do we get used for it, all the time by other countries. Like, this war isn't working. We need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. Whether it be the Korean War, which is a big example of that, which did work, arguably, but we still did get heavily involved with a war that really had nothing to do with us, just because it might have benefited us. We see examples of that all the time. And this actually reminds me, the CIA has kind of been known to do stuff like that, like to kind of influence different countries and world leaders. And that's kind of a controversial part of what they do, is influencing other countries. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it kind of happens even in the State Department overtly, because that's their whole job, is to promote the American agenda. Not necessarily the American agenda, but the particular policy at the time, right? Whoever's in the White House, promote policies. Don't And being in so many other countries, and when they tried to do this nation building thing, that's what we haven't done so well. Like, we're gonna make the world America. It's like, yeah, it's not possible. It's just impossible. It literally is impossible. Americans are unique in every sense of the word. This can't be replicated, and sometimes it shouldn't. They don't need it. I mean, hell, we still have issues with our particular form of government in the states. Being giving everybody a voice. Then guess what? Everybody's got an opinion. Yeah, it's we haven't done so well, but so that's kind of what they do. The influence thing too. That's from the CIA's perspective. That's another just promoting the policies of the current administration. That's kind of what they do. The State Department does the same thing in a more official manner.
Well, were any of your jobs related to gathering info? Because again, CIA's major job is gathering intel. More than anything else is really to gather intelligence. Does it do other things? Yes. But main job is to gather intel. So if we're talking about foreign countries and influencing them, it then comes into question of people that are undercover or inside men, right, in different agencies. Now, I know you can't divulge sources and methods, but what I will ask is when it comes to if you're trying to gather intel on an individual or from an individual mainly, what's the key there? How do you do that successfully, especially since they're going to know that you're of an enemy country?
Yeah, I couldn't get into that really, but it's really just like any other relationship. Build a relationship. That's all it is. And how would you do that, right? I mean, literally any relationship that you're in, either a friendly relationship or a romantic relationship, that's all it is.
Well, my question becomes, because there's two different ways I would say you gather information. If it comes to human intelligence, right, from a
Mm-hmm.
target directly. Again, if we're talking from a target directly, it's either you're posing as somebody that you're not, or you kind of just come as you are. If that makes sense, right? It's either
Mm-hmm.
you're posing as, let's just say, a romantic interest, and then they just happen to tell you certain things that they normally wouldn't tell somebody, or even a
Yeah.
friend or business partner in other cases. But then there's the aspect of you come as the CIA, as the federal government of the US, and you're like, look, we have X, Y, and Z, right? And the question is when you come directly as you are, what types of things are you saying? Are you offering something or are you threatening? Like how does that part work?
So kind of like another like a relationship. If you've ever been in a bad relationship, right? Um, a manipulative relationship. There's plenty of that stuff that goes on a normal basis. Um, Somebody wants something from you and they don't want to give you anything, kind of thing. So I guess I can equate it to stuff like that, right? There's nothing. You never posed as something else other than what you are, right? You're going to try to influence them to do whatever they want. What we want as a policy from the United States, we want to push our policies, right, or promote the policies. And really, that's all it is. Same at State Department in a more overt manner with the embassy and official, parties and diplomatic events and those kind of things. And it could be any number of things too. It could be financing, it could be the finance, how to build the infrastructure in a particular country or something like that. So that could be something that, is given in return for, information and stuff like that, right? It doesn't always have to be, personal favor or money or anything like that. Yeah, it's like in any relationship, right? What am I bringing to this relationship? Same thing. What do I want from you? What am I bringing into this relationship for it?
Well, think about it like this, right? If a guy approaches me, like let's just say the movies, right? Like in a bar,
Mhm.
and and you're a Russian oligarch or someone that's a personal advisor to Putin, right? And that person, that person knows X, Y, and Z. You don't know what, or in other cases, you don't know what you could gain from the person, right? And it's just gather intelligence from them. So a lot of times it comes down to knowing things prior about the target. But a very big question is that a lot of people or theory that a lot of people have is the image that the CIA will blackmail somebody or try to threaten them in a very direct manner of shoving power down their throat, saying, I have the backing of the US government. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, we know where you live, sort of thing. How accurate is that really?
Not very, because we're talking about the collection effort is just to provide the National Command Authority, information to make policy. So there's no coercion that I don't think needs to happen. It doesn't happen. Because it's usually not, vice, a tactical, like what would you call that? Like a interrogation kind of thing. None of that happens. That's like, you know, tactical kind of intelligence kind of stuff in war zones and stuff like that. But generally speaking, no, you want a relationship. You want a long-term relationship with somebody or a person. And they do the same thing to us, right? They're going to assess us based off a normal conversation. And really, it's going to be, what access do you have? What access do I have? And so I'm still getting better at it. I'm still trying to, I'm suspicious about anybody friendly. And I live in a friendly state, in the South. So everybody says hi, and everybody's friendly. It's like, hey, why are you being friendly? Why are you being nice to me? What do you want from me? Kind of thing. I kind of still have that little thing in my head. But no, it's about long-term relationships, like government to government relationships. So it's not, I don't think there's ever been, other than my whole tactical side of the, military tactical war zone stuff, like any need for any kind of coercive kind of stuff.
Well, one thing that, again, the FBI hostage negotiator that I brought on, Melissa, very, 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 you can imagine, personable and very, like, she's the type of person I would want to be negotiating with. I'll say that, if I was holding someone hostage. But she mainly talks about how you can't jam power down somebody's throat.
Yeah.
And she talks about how you can't just say to somebody, hey, I have this whole SWAT team behind me. You're sure you don't want to come out now? Right. Because I asked her about Trump's discussion with, who was it? It was the leader of the Taliban, I think, where he's like, the clip I'm talking about, where he's like, oh, well, here's a picture of your house, and she's like, that's really not what you're supposed to do. And I think I had Sarah Adams on, who's also on the Sean Ryan show.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, as cool as that sounds, you really can't do that, because you can't negotiate with terrorists, because that puts it, and Melissa backed it up. You can't put somebody in a competitive position, especially not a terrorist who kind of thrives off an egotistical lens of bullying somebody into getting what they want, or fear, So, and also too, his house was in Pakistan, which we're not at war with. So, we're not going to bomb his house. So it's kind of an empty threat to begin with. But, that's not the right thing to do. You can't jam power down someone's throat. So if somebody's interacting with you and they're kind of reluctant to give information, what do you do?
It depends. It depends on their access, and that's all. And they hit us up all the time too about the, there's several ways that other countries, operate. Some of it's by coercion, and some of it's by what they call the honeypot. They'll, kind of attack you from, have an agent, as a male, they would throw a female agent out after me if they thought I was somebody to approach, and make them think that they're romantically interested in me. Throw all the stuff out there. So there's that. But so as a from our perspective on the U.S. side, though, those are all like quick things. Those are all like quick intel kind of tactical. When I say tactical, it's like immediate. I need to know something right now. I don't want anything other than right now information from you for a specific reason. Usually, the idea is to have a long-term relationship with people who are able to just keep you informed on what's happening. It could be all that is. What's really happening behind closed doors, right? That person who has that kind of access, that's something you want, just like any other relationship. You want to nurture that because eventually you're going to leave. You got to turn them over, but you got to introduce them to whoever's replacing you at one point. And you don't want that relationship to be hostile or bad in any way. Really, you want a good relationship to last however long it lasts, forever. Really, ideally, as long as they have access. Right, that's the whole thing. If they have access, yeah, I'm going to try to keep in touch with that person for as long as I can keep them. And that's what they do. The same things to us. So it's not always like so in any movie or TV series that you'll see, it has to happen in 2 hours, right? So you see a lot of things condensed in 2 hours for them to paint a picture. And so they'll always portray the coerciveness side of the house, because it has to end in 2 hours. But from a real intel collection, it has to happen. It has to be like a lifetime relationship you build with people.
Well, speaking of being condensed in 2 hours, Sean Ryan, I didn't really bring this up earlier, but I think you have one of his longest interviews. It's a part 1 and a part 2. It's 3 hours. Yes. And I think I watched about like 20 minutes of the first one. Dude, there's so much just content. But no, yeah, so what was the story? How did you know?
Apparently, the second one was better because that one has more views. So we had actually worked together as in GRS back in the day. So we were in Afghanistan together in that capacity, and that's when I first met him. So I first knew of him. Yeah, and then he interviewed a friend of mine, and one of his, I think, his episode number 3, I think. And as he was building that platform and that program, he asked him at the time, that my other buddy, he's like, "Well, who else do you think would be good for the show, right?" And he mentioned me years ago, but I couldn't do it then. And then I finally was able to do it, and then talked to Sean and did the interview. Yeah, that was, I had no idea. That was the first thing. That was the first one I'd ever done, and I had no idea what we were going to talk about. I've seen some of his other interviews, and I kind of had an idea. Okay, that's the same thing he's going to ask me. So, but yeah, that was really just hanging out with Sean. I hadn't seen him in years before that, and I was the first 2 part 2, like, other than I think they were about 2 hours as other before me, all the episodes, and I was his first one with 2 parts to it. And I thought during the interview he's going to edit a lot of stuff. I didn't expect it to go to the 2 parts that it did, but I guess the part 2 is the one that everybody likes. So if you didn't make it through 1, just skip to part 2. I guess that's the one everybody's watching.
Yeah, I don't know. Because he does sometimes. He does some pretty long ones. I know Sarah had a part 1 and a part 2.
Yep. He's had several since then.
Yeah, I think Sarah's. It's funny. I haven't spoken to Sarah in so long. I kind of want to talk to her again, but for various reasons. But I remember her part 2. I think also did better because hers was. And I think it was because of the title. It's like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Barack Obama. Why did Barack Obama meet with Beyonce in the middle of the 13 hours? Benghazi. Yep. Why was Obama doing that? Which is a very fair question, but that's probably why it did better. I wonder why yours did better though. I'll have to look at it again.
I don't know.
Did you take a break in between those 2?
No.
So talk for 6 hours straight about.
Well, we did take a break. We went to lunch, late dinner or late lunch, I think. Yeah, then went back at it.
Yeah. Um, I mean, that's well, at least you had a break. You could have been talking for 6 hours straight, which there are some interviews. I had this guy Matt Cox on. He talked for set. Do you know who Lex Friedman is?
No.
Okay, a big podcaster, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Matt is a former con man who stole $55 million from Mary's Banks, run for 20 years, whatever. But he was interviewed by Lex, and I had him on. I had Matt on my show too. But when Matthew was on my show, I think this was the first place he ever told this was when he did Lex's interview, which has hundreds of thousands of views. If you look at the timestamp, it's like exactly 6 hours. Now, apparently, according to Matt, when Lex asked him, he's like, so "How long did you think you went for at like after the show was done?" He's like, "Oh, about 2 or 3 hours." He went for 7 hours and 30 minutes, telling every little detail of the story. But and the guy had to cut it down to 6 hours. And he doesn't do part one and part two. He just does the whole thing and
Yeah.
upload. So there's a lot of guys like that.
Yeah. I want to say we were actually sitting down chatting about 9 hours total, and then whatever ended up in the end.
I mean, it's an ability. I'll say that, to be able to talk for hours. I know that ability because I have it. So, but yeah, no, that's awesome. And
Yeah, mostly with John though, it was mostly just I hadn't seen him in a while too, so we're just catching up really.
I've had only Sarah on that was on Sean Ryan's show, but
Mhm.
yeah, no, a lot of people that are on his show mainly do it because they knew him beforehand, either in the SEALs or CIA. A lot of other
Yeah,
people he just brings on, but it is very cool though because he's bringing on direct, like he knows them very well.
yeah, yeah, and he's got a lot of stuff in there that he uh, brings up. All the latest and greatest, the newest hard hitting stuff, anything that's going on. What I mean, real stuff people want, are asking questions about. Got interesting stuff, and he's I guess military guys, and that's how he started. I mean, he wanted to get the information out that hey, you're not the only one that's dealing with whatever you're dealing with. There's other people out there, and they're doing okay. You know, it's not the end all be all. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a buddy of mine actually had interviewed Sean, but it was Julian Dory. I talk about him all the time, so I don't want to get too much into detail because I'm gonna tell the story of how I met him and how I did my interview with him. But yeah, no, I always repeat myself on the show, and I'm like, I got to keep track of it. So, what was I even gonna say? Oh yeah, I want to. So over the phone, we were over the phone, and
Yep.
one thing you want to talk about is your company, at least a little bit.
Sure,
So
sure.
tell us more about it.
So it's all based off of I like to say uh, gun control through education, not legislation, kind of stuff, right? It's like, so there's a lot of folks, and there's a market out there, right? And I can do a lot of the stuff that everybody else is doing, but there's plenty of people doing that, right? And I wanted to really transfer the knowledge that I had gained over my military and the agency. And how does that apply to real world, everybody's everyday life? And there's a lot of things. So situational awareness is huge, and I was pushing that a lot. And it's actually a very popular subject for everybody. And um, those classes are really one. I'm excited to teach those kind of things, just how to be street savvy, how to be aware of your everyday life, things that are going on around you. Because that's also part of, even shooting a gun. If you got a gun, great. I'll teach you how to shoot that too. For all the SWAT and law enforcement guys, absolutely. I did that, know that. I'll run through the house with you and stuff like that because it's fun, right? I had a blast doing it for real, and yeah, it's just fun. So teaching firearms safety, not really teaching firearms safety. It's teaching people how to be safe with firearms, right? And situational awareness is a part of that. because there's a lot of stuff that like I can teach you how to shoot a gun, any gun you have, I'll teach you how to shoot it and shoot it well. But there's a lot of things that before you get into a gunfight that you need to be aware of to avoid the whole confrontation to begin with. And I kind of found that out with myself. It's like the more and more the better you get at that, at shooting and running the gun and all that kind of stuff, the least amount you want to use it. So I came up with, things that, what do I need to do to avoid a confrontation to begin with? And that's all situational awareness. And that everything that I did overseas, and I'll get a particular student that'll say, well, I was never in Afghanistan or Iraq, so I don't need to know that stuff. It's like, well, let me explain to you what applies there will apply to your everyday life. How to just look for dangerous situations. A lot of folks are just too busy. They're and I get it. So they don't look around. They don't pay attention to what's going on right around them. And in most of the classes I teach that to, most of the students that I've had in those courses, their eyes are just open to like common sense stuff, but it's stuff that they've learned to make excuses for. Even behaviors. Everybody's socialized to think, I'm not supposed to judge people and think bad things of people. Everybody means good. It's like, well, not so much. And I'll take you exactly in their home. Usually it's in their home areas, their cities and states where they're from. And I show them exactly where the bad people are and where to avoid places, but also where do they wander into neighborhoods and people with money and homes, and they want stuff from you, they want your stuff. So that's really huge. So situational awareness is big. Firearm safety, firearms proficiency, I guess, is more of a better way to put that. Because if you're proficient with a firearm, then you'll be safe with it. And I've taught kids as young as 10 years old to grown adults. And a lot of people, what ended up happening in the 2020 time frame, 2020, 2021, everybody bought guns because of the environment at the time, right? All the riots going on, people burning cities down, literally, and people bought guns, but they didn't buy the training that comes with it. So that's who I'd love to teach, and I do that a lot, actually. Just everyday folks. All they want to do is protect themselves or their family or be safe in their homes. Or even have safe practices within a home with kids, with guns and all that other stuff. But we go through a lot of that kind of stuff. If that's their situation, then I cover that too.
Well, one thing I do want to ask is if you had any advice, like basic advice, right? That if someone were to say to you, let's just say you meet them, right, for the first time, such as myself. Well, actually, this is the second time we're meeting, but hypothetically, if you have somebody in your family that's like, Bob, I need just what's the best advice to stay safe in a place that, just in general, what's the number one advice to stay safe?
Keep your face out of this thing in public spaces. This is the worst thing for people. Keep your face out of your phone. It's not there. Well, so I've been attached to a phone and most of my life for my job, right? Because if that phone rings, I got to pick it up and answer it and respond to somebody. But if there is that much, if anything, what's more important, right? Your life or this text message that came through? Everybody feels the need to immediately answer a text, answer a phone call or something like that, without thinking that they're going to be distracted for a certain time, right? And that phone alone is getting everybody in trouble. And I tell that's one of the first things I tell everybody is just stay off your phone. If you're going to be on your phone, you have to do it. Then don't leave your house or don't leave wherever you're at, whatever establishment, a grocery store or a restaurant or something. Find a safe place, get on the phone, do what you got to do, and then put it away. Oh, that's a huge one. You see so many, anybody can go on and Google these things right now. Like even the carjackings. What was that person doing when they were carjacked? How did somebody walk up to them, open their door, and start pulling them out of their car? Because they were distracted at one point, and guess what they were probably doing? They were on their phone trying to text, even though they're in hands-free states or whatever. People are still on their phones, and getting distracted. Um, yeah, and people get in a rush. So they're on their phones and they're in a rush. They put themselves behind the power curve to begin with. So a little bit of forethought. And I know people are rushed. You got to get to work, and so maybe you have to leave a little bit early. Whatever it takes, right? Go to bed a little bit earlier so you can get up earlier so you can leave, on time and you're not rushed. Because other things happen, traffic stuff. I mean, I haven't been in a city yet and worked in a city yet that the same traffic accidents start happening at the same time. So maybe that's not a good day to travel on the roads, right? Um, yeah, and be aware of what's happening. That's the other one too. Listen to the local media. Local media will tend to report stuff like real stuff. Good stuff too. What's there to do in town, restaurants, and all that stuff. But also they're more they tend to more like report on the actual crime that's happening. Um, Whatever it is, it could be uh, robberies, could be carjackings, could be any number of things. Carjackings at a gas station or something like that. That's where a lot of things happen. Um, yeah, and I go through all that stuff. ATM machines and drive-throughs and gas stations and parking lots and all that kind of stuff to let people more aware. But yeah, the phone is killing everybody. It's literally getting people hurt. Um, and people, somebody can go most of their lives and nothing happens, but guess what? One time they do it in the wrong place, and bad guy sitting there waiting for what? He's waiting for you to get on your phone and get your face in your phone, and you're focused to that little phone, and now you become a victim.
Yes, which a lot of people, including myself, am at fault for doing 100%. Because couldn't tell you the amount of times I've tried to manage my phone and then trying to walk to, and I'm like talking to somebody, and then I'm like, all right, I got to be aware. And I would like to think I'm better than most people, because like when I'm crossing the street, I'll take out my earbuds,
Mhm.
right, and put them in my pocket, check both ways, sort of thing. Like, because then if somebody starts speeding for whatever reason, I'm gonna be at least aware of it.
Yeah.
So I try not to wear earbuds at night. I will sometimes, but generally I
Mhm.
don't. So stuff like that, the small stuff definitely counts, I would like to think. I mean, and to also just avoid, very obviously bad situations. If somebody's in a scuffle in public, turn the other way, stuff like that. Just use basic common sense is
A lot of
pretty
it
much.
is, yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is. But you'd be surprised what, uh, when people get in, even if it's a perception of being late to somewhere, right? They get themselves rushed, and that's when they start not noticing things. Like even right now, I got, they sell these earbuds in pairs, one for your left ear, one for your right ear. But even right now, I'm only wearing one because I can hear everything else that's going on around me, outside and everything. That's a really simple thing to do. And I've done that too in regular communications on protected detail as an example. You'll ever wear typically one earpiece. Um, so that's kind of what I've adopted as the norm by using a regular phone, because it also allows me to hear everything else. And that opens up your just awareness to what's around you instead of closing everything off. Um, yeah, that phone is the number one culprit of a lot of bad activity that happens, a lot of victimization.
Yeah, and it's a very unfortunate thing too, because so many times it's like, people in public just completely don't notice what's going on around them, just completely. And that could even be people that aren't even on their phone, that are just generally unaware. Like,
Oh yeah.
again, common sense is such a big part of it. When people are always asking, like, why are the streets, so unsafe? And like, sometimes part of it is also just people get involved in the wrong thing. Like, they feel the need to, you know, affect somebody or do something about something that they should know they kind of can't do. Now, am I saying that if somebody is being hurt, you should do nothing about it? Absolutely not. You should get involved. But there's also times where it's like, obviously suspicious looking people, for example, they'll walk into a restaurant and, you know, and somebody will feel the need to confront them, like, oh, you can't do that. And it's like, really? Like, the guy obviously has a weapon. And it's like, in Texas, that happens all the time. And I'm like, really? Like, in Texas, you're gonna get into road rage, where people get out of their car and shoot somebody in the head, and they're like, it was self-defense. Like, really? Like, and you can say that too in Texas. I know that happens all the time. I have family that's in Texas. Happens all the time where people get into road rage, and it's like, oh yeah, oh really? Bam. And then the guy's not in road rage anymore. The guy's pretty calm, I'll tell you that much. But it's a shame. But you know, just be smart in a lot of those scenarios. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, it's a mindset too, though, because and you can listen to post-incident victim statements, and they do have a lot of decent cop shows that are like that talk to victims after their crimes. And one of the biggest things, one of the most common things everybody says, I just never thought it could happen to me. Everybody's statement, it doesn't matter what just happened or what else they say, but that'll be part of their statements. I never thought it could happen to me. And it happens all around. It's like a person living in Tornado Alley, right? And you can live there for years and nothing happens to your house. And your neighbor's house disappeared last year. And then the one time it rips to your place and you lose everything, that they say the same thing. I just never thought it could happen to me. I saw it happen. I've lived in this area. I've seen it happen to others, and this time it happened to me. I never thought it could happen.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, it really is, but some people never learn. I know that much. That much is absolutely true. Some people never learn, and no matter how long I live, I feel like that's going to reign true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm only 17 right now, and I see that every day of my life. I'm like, what? Like, this guy, he got told something so obvious, and whatever. It is what it is. But let's go. Switching away from that part now, because I'm gonna frustrate myself with how stupid some people are. But do you have any advice for young people?
Yes, a good old former president of ours said, "Trust but verify." He was referencing, other politicians, but yeah, don't. That's the other thing. I mean, there used to be a thing for kids, little smaller kids, like stranger danger kind of stuff. But now everybody's growing up with not a stranger danger. That's a stranger is bad. First thing I'm going to think of is they're ill intent. But now everybody's growing up to have excuses for things. And they're not trusting their gut instincts, right? That's huge. I would say the younger generation now is being socialized to make excuses for the human instinct of things that you're feeling and seeing, right? It's like I feel that those are things we're inherently born with, those instincts, right? Hair in the back of your neck, all those things you want to think about. Why is that happening to me? Well, that's a human nature. That's something happening to you naturally. That's something, maybe you didn't see it consciously, right? But you saw something that made your brain say, hey, danger, something bad is happening. But you make an excuse for it. Yeah. Stay in pairs, be social, but be smart about it. The a lot of the things are happening too online. People are being targeted online on social media or games, even the game systems, which is pretty popular. Um, hey, let's whatever they're getting in contact that way. So the human trafficking is real. That is really happening. And that's how a lot of the folks are getting trapped into these kind of things. They're meeting them online somewhere. It could have been a social networking thing, could have been a game of some sort. But that's how they're getting lured into bad places to literally be taken. Um, yeah, it's this like trust but verify kind of things. I don't know you. I know you as an icon, or I know you on the social media, and we've shared some text together, but do I really know this person? No, that should be the first thing. Like, no, I don't. Because people could say all kinds of things online and be totally different person in real life. And that's how it happens. That's how a lot of this human trafficking stuff happens. And that's how the the kids are getting I guess lured into places by pedophiles and all those kind of things. I mean, that's just you can't ignore that too. You can't ignore the fact that that's happening. The gal that was killed just recently at the University of Georgia when she was on a little jog. Yeah, just got to be smart about doing things. You don't want to live in fear, but you just got to be aware, right? And be prepared for it. And probably listen to those things that your body and your mind are telling you naturally. It's like something
Just li-
just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. What was that? I don't know what it was, but I need to leave this area where I'm at. I need to change what I'm doing right now.
just listen. Again, just be aware. Just listen.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice to people in general?
The same thing. Yeah, and everybody is susceptible to it. And I say that in my situational awareness classes too, because guess what? I was approached by somebody who wanted money from me. And I was with another guy. So we did everything right. Another guy bigger than me. We didn't look like victims or, walking confidently and all this other stuff that they tell you to do. But so the people, so I'm gonna pin it on drugs, right? They want what they want so badly that they don't have any sense of like they're not afraid of consequences, because usually sometimes there is no consequences to them. They just want their stuff so bad. They want what you want. They want what you have, your money, your stuff, your cars, because they want to get what they want. And usually it's drug related. But they're so desperate that they don't care anymore. They don't care about consequences. And that's the reality of what's happening. That you can't make excuses for that. You can watch the local news and every day and hear something that's going on. If not, somebody just had a YouTube video, posted on something bad happening. The local neighborhoods too. Like the local I'm going to say the neighborhood, not necessarily the neighborhoods, but cities and neighborhoods usually have like their area um either social media page, right, for their area. And a lot of folks actually put some good stuff on there, and there's a lot of other stuff you got to weed through, like there's the lost cat notices and stuff like that. But hey, somebody at one point is going to say, and I've seen them, they'll say stuff like, hey, there was a guy the other day, I saw him walking around the street, and he was checking the doors on all the cars in the parking lot, the parking driveways. And all right, well, now I got something to watch out for. And I know now something is happening in my neighborhood. Um, so yeah, even if you're in a nice neighborhood, guess where they're going? They're going to take, because you got a house and you got stuff in it, they're going to take your stuff. So yeah, I just yeah, don't make excuses for stuff. I mean, that's a huge one. Everybody's making excuses for everybody, and yeah, and then think it's happening in my neighborhood, and it could happen to me. And if it's more like a mindset, like, okay, maybe it's not going to happen to me, but what if it did? What would I do? Just that alone would change your attitude and your mindset towards things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good place to end off. I want to end the recording. We'll talk a little bit after the show. Do you have any final words to the audience?
Ninja Bob Solutions, if you want training. Ninja Bob Solutions. I got a website, Ninja Bob Solutions Facebook page, and yeah, hit me up if you need training.
Yeah, go follow him. I don't know what your Instagram is, but you know what? Go follow him on Instagram. Go look it up and go visit his website, Ninja Bob Solutions. All right, I'm gonna end the recording. All right.
All right.
All right, and 3, 2, 1.